Hi, I'm Miranda Kristovnikov and this is They Didn't Teach Me That. I've been contacted by a new teacher who's in desperate need of some advice on his big problem, communicating with parents. I've got his plea for help on this MP4 player and I'm going to play it to some experts, including a former cabinet minister. Let's see if they can help. I'm on my way to meet my first expert, but in the meantime, take a look at the message I received.
Hello, my name is Kevin Orchard. I'm a teacher at Collier Lane Primary School in the West Midlands. I haven't been teaching for that long and I'm learning all the time. But one of the things that they didn't teach me at university was how to deal with parents. I've got two issues which I'd like some guidance on. The first issue is at the end of a long day, I'm seeing the children off, making sure they all get back to their parents safely. When across the playground I catch the eye of a parent who obviously wants to speak to me. They come across and demand that they have some of my time immediately, and I try to arrange an appointment with them, but they won't take no for an answer. My second problem is relating to parents' evening. How do I deal with a parent who is certain that their child is an angel in the classroom, but really there are some behaviour problems and they aren't performing quite as well as the parent thinks? How do I put this point over to them without hurting the parents' feelings? I could really do with some help on these two issues, please. Thank you.
So the main issues are coping with parents' evenings and handling those everyday interactions with parents at the end of school. And my first expert should know a thing or two about both. I'm here in East London because I thought I'd start by talking to the guy who runs one of the biggest primaries in the country. This is Nelson Primary in East Ham. So Tim, your school is in probably the most multicultural, multilingual part of the country here in East London. And that presumably creates extra challenges for teachers and parents. Is it difficult to establish when communication between teachers and parents should actually take place?
Here we have a policy where we go down onto the playground every morning and every afternoon with the classes. So we say to the parents, we'll stand and chat with you if there's something you want to ask us for 5-10 minutes at the end of the day. But if you want a longer, more private conversation, then come to the office, make an appointment to come and see us whenever you want to.
And one of Kevin's biggest worries is how to deal with parents on parents' evening. Any tips for that?
Always be direct, eye contact with the parent and tell them how it is. They will respect you for that, even if they don't like the message initially. And what I always suggest to teachers is that they do a good news sandwich. So a bit of good news at the start to welcome, oh, isn't your son particularly good at such and such? Then the bad news, if there is any, in the middle, and then a bit of good news at the end. So they start the conversation well, they finish the conversation well, and you've got over the tricky bit in the middle.
And finally, your top tip for communicating with parents?
Directness and honesty, and treat the people as you would like to be treated yourselves.
Thanks very much, Tim. Obviously, your years of experience have paid off with your advice.
Thank you for coming.
OK, well, some excellent advice from Tim to start me off. But I'm always hearing that supposedly much of what we communicate isn't done through our words at all, a subject my next expert knows all about. I've come to the home of Alan Pease, who sold millions of books on body language, to find out what messages Kevin can give to parents without saying a word.
How do I deal with a parent who is certain that their child is an angel in the classroom, but really there are some behaviour problems and they aren't performing quite as well as the parent thinks? I could really do with some help on these two issues.
Great, so what did you think of that then?
Well, it's a very common problem that people have, and if I had to pick a word that Kevin needs to work with, the word is to be non-threatening and to get on with another person. The problem here is 60 to 80% of the impact you make on another person in a face-to-face situation, Miranda, is the way you look, appear and behave.
Imagine a scenario where Kevin's got to deal with a parent who disagrees with what he's doing, for example. How can he use his body language to cope with that scenario?
Well, the first thing is to be agreeable. The minute you cross or fold your arms, we found that the person who's the recipient, their receptivity of what you are saying, what they can remember, goes down up to 40% less. So the minute the arms cross, they start to perceive you as being either threatened or intimidated, or that you can be intimidated. So keep yourself uncrossed is the first thing. And as you listen to a person talk, you nod. Now, it doesn't mean that you're agreeing, but it means that you're non-threatening. You agree with their right to an opinion. And the way you do that is you say, well, I can understand how you feel that way. I understand your opinion. Doesn't mean you're agreeing.
And is there any way that Kevin can use his body language to make sure that a point that he's making is getting across, that he's actually being understood and listened to?
Absolutely. The key is to mirror. That is, the amount of eye contact that person's giving you, you respond with that. So if, for example, you were talking with a Japanese or many Asian culture people, they're likely to look away, because they'll look away up to 2/3 of the time when talking, because it's deemed as impolite to look at someone on the eyes. Where in British culture, if you're born in Britain and raised in this culture, meeting someone's gaze 2/3 of the time is the cultural norm. Now, if it's more than 2/3, it means you either are madly in love with that person, or you're about to give them a black eye. That is, you're aggressive. You don't like them, or you do love them. Secondly is also mirror the body language of the person you want to create a rapport with. However they sit, and we're doing it right now, however they sit, you intentionally copy it.
So have I copied you, or have you copied me?
I'm not quite sure. We'd have to do a rerun on this film just to see who it was. I'm not quite sure. But what it shows is that the people who are copying have rapport.
And finally, at the end of the day, Kevin's finding that parents are sort of bombarding him with questions, and he needs to deal with that. Is there any way he can use his body language to deal with that situation better?
Oh yes, he absolutely can. The minute the finger comes out and starts to talk to an audience, the audience starts to feel intimidated. They recall up to 60% less than what you would have said if you had said the same thing with the palm up. And you'll read this unconsciously and say, this man or this woman is trying to tell me what to do. And as a parent, I do this job better than you anyway, so you have no right to be telling me what to do, because I'm paying your wages. And this is how a lot of people think. Now, what if you suddenly discover you are a finger pointer? Here's what you do. You squeeze that finger against your thumb, and you can practice this. Open your hand. You'll see many leading politicians do this. They've been well trained by someone, apparently. When they talk like this. Now, when you talk with what's called the purse, it's like a ring. People describe you as goal-oriented, confident, and that you know what you're talking about.
Fantastic advice. That was very useful, actually. I'm going to use some of that in my interviews
and
as well.
don't touch your nose or face.
Because you're lying. Yeah?
Well, we know that people who don't tell the truth have increased hand-to-face contact.
Yeah.
So if you say, Mrs. Smith, your son's doing very, very well, and thanks for coming to see me, and I'd like to see you again next time, she's not likely to believe you.
Great stuff. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Well, interesting advice. Wonder what Kevin's going to think of that. Okay, I think we've covered just about all the points, but you know, it's always interesting to see what teachers can learn from people in other professions. So I've arranged to meet a man who spent his life communicating with all manner of people over a 50-year career in politics. Tony, you've spent many years working in politics, and obviously to be a good politician you have to be a good communicator. So in a nutshell, what makes somebody a good communicator?
I think first of all you have to listen. And if people feel you're listening to them, then they will listen to you. They may not agree with you, but at least they feel you're straight.
And is someone born with good communication skills, or is it something you learn? I mean, can you be born with the gift of the gab?
I don't think it's got anything to do with that at all. If you believe somebody, then you listen to what they're saying. If you don't, even if they're very clever at using their hands and using the right language and added the vision thing and all that rubbish that the spin doctors try and teach you, I don't believe in any of that.
Now, you're a very eloquent speaker. Is it just the words that make you a good communicator, or is it more than that? Is it your body language as well?
I think if you're self-conscious about what you're talking about, then that cuts you off from somebody else. You see, communication is conveying what's in your mind or your heart into somebody else's mind and their heart. It's not something you can fashion.
And taking things back to a teacher now, if you want to get across a bad point or some bad news to a parent, how do you do that in a diplomatic way?
My first thought would be to say, now, about Johnny, tell me about him yourself. How does he seem to you? Is he happy, or has he got good friends? Because if you don't understand their perspective, they will never listen to yours. It is a question of respect, isn't it? I think that most Real communication is when one person meets another and they respect and can learn to respect each other.
Tony, thanks very much. It's very, very sound advice, especially the part about listening. Thank you very much. After my 3 meetings, I'm more sure than ever that effective communication is one of the most vital skills a teacher needs to have. But hopefully we've got some great tips for Kevin to help those interactions with parents go more smoothly. Well, this is Kevin's school and he's waiting for me inside. I've squeezed all those interviews onto this MP4 player, so let's go and see what he thinks of the advice. Well, while Kevin watches that and all the children are playing outside, let's just remind ourselves of where my journey's taken me on this topic of communicating with parents. First, head teacher Tim Benson suggested establishing a convenient time each day to talk briefly to parents. And he recommended the good news sandwich approach to parents' evening, slotting a less welcome comment in between 2 positive remarks or questions. Next, body language expert Alan Pease suggested that essentially Kevin should be mirroring parents to create rapport, and that he should practice non-confrontational body gestures. Finally, I met Tony Benn, who told me that the essence of good communication is to listen and to show that you're listening, and that it's easy to communicate well if you understand someone's perspective. So Kevin should always try to find out a bit about a child's home life. And Kevin's just about finished. Let's see what he made of that then. So, initial thoughts on our experts' opinions.
It's really interesting to get views from people who are non-teaching staff, actually, because teachers have maybe got a certain way of looking at things, but it's nice to get expert advice from people in different fields, and I found it absolutely fascinating.
Great, excellent.
Really good.
So you had a problem where you were sort of being approached by parents grabbing you after school and being quite demanding of your time. Now, was there any advice in there that's going to help you deal with that?
There was actually, yes. I've learned I need to show the parents I am interested, that I feel the problem is as important to them as it is to me. The important thing is to actually show that you are listening to them and you recognise there is a problem and you really want to help them with it.
And what did you think of Tim Benson's good news sandwich?
Oh, the good news sandwich was fantastic. I must admit, if I thought about that, what I would tend to do is to either get the bad news out the way first and think we'll build on the bad news. But in hindsight, that would probably set a very negative start to the meeting. But to have it in the middle, then I can see a lot of logic behind that.
Now, I noticed that you were talking with your palms up, so obviously some of the advice that Alan Pease had to give has gone in already.
I find that fascinating. But the best one was the pointing and having to sort of... And I've seen politicians doing this, and I couldn't think quite what they'd... But I can see now that when they hold it like that, so I'll certainly be doing that.
Now, it was a great privilege interviewing Tony Benn, obviously a fantastic communicator. What of his advice was really useful to you?
The thing I'll remember is about the listening. If you listen to somebody and you show that you're listening, then they're going to be more willing to communicate with you, and they're more likely to open up to you and tell them what's really worrying them. So I found that fascinating as well.
Well, I'm really glad some of the advice was useful. It sounds like a lot of it probably was. Good luck with everything. Lovely to meet you. Thanks, Kevin. Hopefully Kevin is now better prepared to face Parents' Evening. If you want to watch this programme on your own MP4 player, you'll be able to download it as a podcast at the end of the series from the Teachers TV website. But if you can't wait until then, don't forget you can now watch and download the programme via broadband. Next time I'll be sorting out the problems of another new teacher, but until then, goodbye.